Hello again, my friends. Welcome back to Talking Knockouts. I am one half of the team. I am the Gov. And for those that have come across with us from Talking Down, the final look ahead to the crew game, welcome back. For those that are new to what we do here, Talking Knockouts is the show that is the fan show for the boxing fan. We will discuss the upcoming Tyson Fury Dillian Whyte fight. Will there be a knockout? Who's to know? But I can probably go ahead and guess there'll be many knockdowns. Before I bring in my partner, who has well, if you've watched the crew game, you'll know where he's disappeared to. But this is the tale of the tape, as it were. Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte. We have Fury 33, Whyte 33, fights 32-30. Whyte has 2 losses to Fury's big fat 0, but Fury does have that draw. Knockouts 22-19. It's all on the line. Who will be walking out heavyweight champion? Mr. Phillips, welcome back.
He did.
So, Tyson Fury, Dillian Whyte.
It's here.
It's here, yeah.
It's kind of a
94,000 people.
Yeah. Well, let's start there. That's going to be the 6th biggest boxing crowd ever in the history of the sport. 135,000 still the record at the Juneau Park Arena in Milwaukee back in 1941. Tony Zhao versus Billy Pryor. Yeah, I can imagine that now. 135,000. Yeah. I think the 6th biggest crowd actually is at Soldier Field. I think it was Jack Dempsey, Gene Tunney, 120 something. I know Julio Cesar Chavez fought 120,000 in Mexico City. So, but yeah, huge, absolutely huge, 94,000. But a fight that's had probably very little fanfare, I would say, in the mainstream, purely because of Dillian Whyte's no-shows in the lead up to the press conference. He wasn't there. He didn't do the open workout this week. He turned up for the face-to-face. But yeah, so very strange when you consider 94,000 tickets have been sold, and you've got this to and froing over who appears at what.
That's the appeal of Tyson Fury, isn't it? Let's be honest. Tyson Fury is a box office attraction and a box office thing. And if they're going to get 94 for Dillian Whyte, if Fury comes through it, if Joshua can take care of business his side, you could surpass the 100,000 mark for the undisputed heavyweights of Fury and Joshua. You really could, because Dillian, all due respect, and this is heavyweight boxing, he could land a surprise on Saturday. He isn't AJ.
No, look, he's a good contender, Dillian, and he's done 1,600 days as the mandatory contender for the WBC. So no one can argue that he doesn't deserve this chance. But you're right. I mean, he didn't turn up to the original press conference that announced the show. That gave the link to the tickets. And Tyson said in his interview with Coogan on IFL TV yesterday, I've sold 94,000 tickets on my own. So he's the attraction. Dillian has been a pay-per-view star previously on Sky. Whether or not I think he actually is a pay-per-view star, I think there's an argument there to say he's not, because the two were, it was Chisora twice and Joseph Parker. I think back in the day, they probably would have just been normal Sky shows. But any big fight these days seems to carry a pay-per-view fee to it. And it's going to be 25 quid on Saturday, which is a little bit lumpy given, where people are in the world right now, post-pandemic, energy bills soaring, fuel bills soaring. It's a lot of money, really, I think.
So those no-shows, what's riding on that? Because personally, I think it's Dillian Whyte not wanting to get embroiled in the Tyson Fury media mind game train, which he's very, very good at. Yeah. Normally, what he does is he makes it a circus. He ropes the competitor in, gets inside their mind, rattles them before the bell goes off. Whereas Dillian's taken himself out of that circus, hasn't put himself in that environment. Is that what it is, or is another way?
Maybe. Look, Whyte was in an arbitration with the WBC, who obviously is the belt that Fury holds, in that he felt he should have had more than 20% from the purse bid, which Frank Warren won with a world record £30.1 million. Quite where Frank has got that money from, I don't know. Maybe that's why he's charging 25 quid. I suppose it's not 30. But there's an element of that. But let's not forget, Dillian Whyte has spoken a lot of smack in his own career as well, calling people sandbags and all that kind of thing. He can bring it to the table as well, Dillian. But there's an argument there to say that probably Deontay Wilder was maybe a beaten man in both in Dillian Whyte. Deontay Wilder Fury 2 and 3 at the press conference. You may remember in the third fight, he didn't say anything. Do you remember he had his headphones on?
Yeah.
Just to try and cut out the noise.
To this day.
I feel like he was probably a beaten man then anyway. But I mean, look, I like Dillian. He's got a great story. We'll come to that in a minute. I like Dillian. He deserves his chance. Like I say, anyone who's spent 1,634 days, I think, as mandatory contender deserves a shot at the title. And it's great that it's going to be 2 Brits at Wembley Stadium with the 6th biggest boxing crowd ever. It's going to be an occasion, absolutely.
Jason's hoping we get another Undertaker moment. Obviously, when Fury was laid spark and then he came back to life. Mark can see Dillian's bringing a surprise KO to win. Chris Boyd, the winner will be whoever Daniel decides is the winner.
Well, Daniel, right. That brings. If there's look, the Wembley Arch is famous for casting that shadow over the Wembley Stadium. But yeah, Daniel Kinahan and his cartel is certainly casting a shadow over Tyson Fury's involvement in this fight. Now, for people that don't know, Kinahan started MTK Global, which has managed hundreds of fighters, of which Tyson Fury was one of those fighters. And the account showed at Top Rank, which is the dual promoter with Frank Warren. So he's got American promoter and UK promoter, Bob Arum being the Top Rank president. They paid Kinahan $8 million to be a consultant over the last 4 Fury fights. And then this week, or maybe the week before, I can't remember. I can't remember what it was, but the US government put a sanction out for Kinahan and the $5 million bounty on his head. And today the UAE have frozen all his financial assets because he lives in Dubai. So the net is closing on Daniel Kinahan. And the Kinahan cartel have been at war. Kind of almost like, I know you're a big fan of The Sopranos, Martin, and Tony Soprano. I've had a kind of like an Irish turf war with the Hutch family for many years, 6, 7, maybe going on beyond that. And a lot of it comes down to that. Jamie Moore, who was Jack Cattrall's coach in one of the last Talking Knockouts we did, Jamie Moore was staying in Daniel Kinahan's house in Marbella, came out of the house, got shot in a drive-by. Case of mistaken identity. So something's going on. And so, yeah, look, boxing and the mob have got a real close connection. I mean, gangster shock in boxing. I'm not surprised. Sonny Liston, when he fought Cassius Clay, his fights and his finances were operated by the mafia, even back then in the 60s. So it's close alignment. But, yeah, and I feel like Fury is in a bit of a funny space at the moment because he's been asked this by the mainstream media, who are now obviously interested in this being a news story. What's your association with Kinahan? So it's Christy Kinahan, who's Daniel Kinahan's father, and Chris Kinahan, his brother. They've all got a bounty on their head through US sanctions. And Fury's been saying It's none of my business, and whatever they do is not my business. But the fact is, as I just said, the Irish Mirror said that Top Rank paid Kinahan family $8 million as a consultant over his last 4 fights in the States. So I feel like Tyson, he looked edgy to me when he was interviewed by Kugan Cassius on IFL last night. And I feel like this is casting a shadow a little bit. And this is manna from heaven for Dillian Whyte, because if your mind's, we've seen with Tyson before, if his mind's not quite focused, as it was in the 3rd fight when he thought he had it won against Deontay Wilder, he got floored twice in the 4th round. So let's see how that pans out. That's on his shoulders, I believe. And with MTK Global, which was the company Kinahan started, like I said, had hundreds and hundreds of fighters that they managed. It's closed down. It's closing down at the end of this month. It's just huge what's happening. And then Fury said, this is going to be my last fight. Is that aligned to the fact that the Kinahan story's come live? I don't know. But lots of weird things are coming out over the Kinahan involvement. Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. Ben Moore, it's Dill's mind game. Simple. He wants to get inside Fury's head, but unfortunately it's not working. AJ's a busted flush, says the Cruncher. Good evening, Callie. Hope you're well. He also says, I'm paying nada. Thoughts on John Fury's antics at the presser? Asked Callie.
Me and Cruncher
loved it. Loved it.
Big John.
Love Big John.
I remember back when Fury made his debut on the undercard of, I think it was Froch versus Pascal in Nottingham. And Fury was like a 19-year-old, 20-year-old making his debut. I think it was the first fight up. I always remember Big John, Gypsy John, as he was known in the trade. He stood up, so he was blocking everyone's view from watching Tyson's thing. So like he's watching the debut and just stood up while everyone was seated. He's a funny character, John. He's not been able to be part of any of the fight weeks because it's been in the States, and he was put into prison for GBH, gouged a man's eye out in a traveller fight. So he went to prison for a number of years. I do like John. He's a bit of a character, but I do feel like he thinks he's a tag team partner of Tyson's a little bit, to borrow like a WWE angle to it all. You get him on that stage and he thinks he's fighting, I think. But to be fair to Tyson and Dillian and the two camps, they did manage to calm it down. But yeah, I think John just gets carried away. As he always says, we're a fighting family. The Fury family goes way back in generations of fighting. And, you know, you put the bright lights there, you put the cameras there, you put the microphones there, and he just can't help himself a little bit. But John needs to chill out a little bit. He's not in the ring.
Fiercely protective father, isn't he?
Do you need to be fiercely protective of the heavyweight champion at 6'9" and 18 stone?
Your boy is always your boy, is he not?
Yeah, I just think that fighting is in the Fury blood, and when there's a head-to-head, they just can't help themselves. Just can't help it. He is good value. He is good value.
Great, I love him. I think he's absolutely brilliant. But I think you've also got to think it's all about honour, isn't it? It's the family name, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's always said that. You know, if you ever go at the Fury family, you're having a go at my father's name. So I do admire that. But it's a time and place for some of these things. Sometimes, you know, that the culture they come from doesn't probably translate very well into the mainstream media when you've got, you know, I won't say fair weather fans, but people that are interested in watching a fight, but that has garnered a 94,000 attendance. They're going to think, who the hell was this guy? You know, but it is what it is. I do like John, but sometimes he just got to chill out a little bit. And I think he did say that in the interviews yesterday.
Last time I saw anything with John on it, it was a BT documentary, and he'd bought a couple of Russian traveller wagons, and he was living off in the wilderness. Yeah,
he was living in a field near Manchester Airport.
Yeah. Yeah, all I need is me in the wilderness. That's all I need.
Yeah, simple life. If you've not seen those, just put those into John Fury into YouTube and you'll find it.
Oh, it's a wealth of information. Just a wealth of fun.
Very good.
Yeah. Mike D, is there a clause in the contract for another fight? I hope not.
I don't think so. It's mandatory, which is why it went to purse bids, because they couldn't work out a deal between all the promoters, which is why Eddie Hearn's not involved in this as Dillian Whyte's promoter. He bid 24 million for the fight. Frank Warren and Bob Arum together bid 30 million, so they won it. They're the promoters of the fight. There might be a little angle that Eddie's telling, because the Hearn family don't get on with the Warren family.
No,
they're at loggerheads quite a lot. And
Romeo is Montagues and Capulets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they've often got the competing shows. I've got no evidence for this, but it wouldn't surprise me if Eddie's in Dillian's ear and going, try and bugger it up a little bit if you can. Yeah, exactly. I do feel like the show would have run smoother if Eddie had won it. I mean, you've got the DAZN money behind you. They're used to doing really big events. I can't remember the last time Frank Warren done a stadium show, if ever. I think if you watched the press conference the other day, there was mic issues and it didn't run quite as smooth as what an Eddie Hearn show would have done. But I'm all in on it. Yes, thanks to me.
If I had to say, which side are you? Are you the Eddie Hearn family side? Are you? I'm a Frank Warren. I think he's brilliant, Frank Warren.
I like Frank, and he's done great for boxing. And we talk about mafia and gangsters. You remember he only survived by the skin of his teeth a shooting himself. Going back into, I think, probably late 80s, early 90s. I like both. Anything that's good for British boxing. They're always going to be competing for the same level, aren't they? They're the same audience. I think having both in the world means we get the best of both. We get to see all the good fights. But I do feel like probably Eddie has probably the slightly slicker operation.
Mark Wolf, Fury got proper pissed off with Sky with those questions.
I'm amazed that they carried on. I would, if that had been me as the press officer, I probably would have jumped in and said, no questions on that. I mean, how can you answer a question like that when you've got US sanctions against the guy they're talking about? It should have been a no-go, really.
Well, this is it. Robert Grimsey, Fury to win 11th in the 11th round. Big John is a madman hero, says Robert Grimsey. Mike D, I hope Usyk gets a chance to fight Fury.
I hope so as well. I mean, look, Fury's talking about retiring. I mean, he's done this before. I do feel like the Daniel Kinahan situation is probably making him think to himself, well, I'm associated with this guy. There's no getting away with it. When he was in the United Arab Emirates not so long ago, maybe a couple of months ago, they were photoed together. So, there's association there, and I'm pretty certain that's playing on Tyson's mind. But if you are going to retire, probably in front of 94,000 fans at Wembley, 6th biggest crowd ever in boxing history, pretty good way to go out, isn't it?
But he's going to want to go out winning, not losing. The last thing he wants the world to know is a victory, not a defeat.
Well, exactly. I mean, look, even John Fury said, what's Tyson going to do after boxing? The guy has said, like, for his own mental health, he has to train every single day. The fight game is his life. It's the Fury's life. For generations it has been. I'll be surprised if he did retire after this. Let's just let this simmer down a little bit and see what happens. But the winner of Joshua Usyk is there for him if he wins on Saturday, absolutely.
And if it's Joshua, that's when I can see that being the retirement fight. Because what a way to go out, undisputed English heavyweight champion, as in, like, you know, there's nobody else the world can say, oh, but he didn't fight. He didn't fight.
But you could easily get into that situation that we've seen with Wilder. There's a first fight, then there's a second one, then it's 1-1 or whatever. Then it goes to a third. Do you know what I mean? Where does it end? You know, that's the issue with these rematches.
It is, but you do that by handling your business when you need to do it, not in front of 94,000 fans, to then give you the opportunity to not have any issues. Because if you do lose on Saturday, that does create another logjam, as it were, as it would. Isn't Usyk also fighting in Ukraine? Asks Mike D.
I think if Usyk and Joshua do fight, there's a good chance think that's going to be in Saudi Arabia. That's the big rumor. You might remember that Joshua reclaimed his title in Saudi against Andy Ruiz. So I think they could do like a purse-built thing there. And you've got to think that a lot of Eastern Bloc money is in Saudi Arabia, all those old Soviet states. So I think you could see that. I think you could see that there. I mean, Wembley could be a choice, but I think he could go to Saudi. We'll wait and see.
I think that match is important for the outcome if Fury does manage to beat Dillian, because Fury has always maintained he wants to be this generation's best heavyweight boxer. He's got rid of Deontay Wilder, big hitter. People said Fury's chin could not handle Deontay Wilder. It handled it. It took it. He beat him every single fight. It could be argued, although the results will say different. AJ is really all Usyk, but AJ, if AJ can come through it, is the only possible name people will forever say he never fought. And I don't think Tyson wants that for his name. He wants it to be undisputed. No ifs, no buts.
Yeah, I mean, there's always fights that pass by in boxing history. We never saw Lennox Lewis versus Riddick Bowe. That was a fight everybody wanted to see. We always thought we weren't going to get Lewis versus Mike Tyson, which we got eventually, but Tyson was aged and got stopped. I think it was in 8 or 9 rounds. But I mean, look, as Trevor Ramos says there, Whyte is a dangerous fighter. Let's come to him, Mike. He has a puncher's chance. I think he's probably got more than a puncher's chance. He's a very good fighter, Dillian Whyte. I mean, his story, look, Tyson Fury's story is like something of legend, isn't it? You know, he's gone away. He's got mental health issues. He's ballooned to like 25, 26 stone. He's lost all of that. He did the famous video where he's barely out of breath, like after about a 20-yard run, saying, Deontay, you've made me to come back. And then we saw the 3 fights. I mean, Dillian Whyte's story is, if not more than that, as a film. So he started out in Jamaica. He was born in Port Antonio in Jamaica. His mother left him at 2 years old to come to London to try and make the family fortune. She sent money back. She left him with a family who didn't really look after him properly. And he became a street child. He would go days without eating. His father was like he only saw occasionally. He would only see on occasion. And to learn to swim, his father put him in a boat. They rowed out 200 meters into the ocean, and his father just threw him out into the ocean. So see you back at the beach. So Dillian Whyte is a hard man. So he comes over to London, 12 years old. He's running in with gangs in Tulse Hill and Clapham. He gets shot. He gets stabbed. He gets kidnapped. He becomes a father at 13. Can you believe that?
Wow.
He then goes to prison. He's facing 20 years behind bars. He's in a penitentiary in Bristol. His mother comes to see him. Your older brother has died. I don't want to lose another son to crime. It's then that he then groups up with a youth worker, and he takes him to what's called Mogul's boxing gym, where he starts kickboxing. And then that journey starts, becomes an amateur. His first very amateur fight was against a 20-year-old called Anthony Joshua, who he beats on points. And that's where it started. So Dillian Whyte, if anyone deserves a title, it's Dillian Whyte. When I say he got shot twice in a gang fight in Clapham. He runs away from the drama. He had a gun at his head. He runs away from the drama. He gets shot twice in his leg. He's just watched Rambo, the film Rambo. He goes home. He sterilizes it himself and took the 2 bullets out with pliers from the toolbox. Can you believe that?
Fuck me.
It's unbelievable. I mean, if he was to win on Saturday, I mean, if anyone deserves a world title to turn their life around, you're facing 20 years behind bars and suddenly you're fighting in front of 94,000 at Wembley for the WBC title. It's an unbelievable story to me. That could easily be a film one day if he was to lift the title. If he doesn't win it this time around, I mean, it's going to be tough for him. If he doesn't win this time around and Fury does retire, he's still going to be in the mix for other fights. And I do feel like even if he doesn't win Saturday, he would be in the mix for a version of the title at some point, I think. But yeah, fair play to Dillian. Do you know what I mean?
So a real redemption story could be playing out for us in front of our very eyes come Saturday.
He said, like, when he was in Jamaica and his mum had left him in Jamaica and he was just a street kid and he would rummage through bins to find a bottle of Coke to try and get his sugar level up. We would steal sweets from the local shop just so he could try and stay alive. And he came to London as illiterate. And look at him now. He's earning £6 million on Saturday night. So I'm absolutely delighted for him. I think he's like a good guy. He's quite a chill guy. He has spoken a lot of smack. If he was to become a champion, fair play to him. What a story that would be. And he does have a good opportunity. Like I say, this Kinahan thing is on Tyson's shoulders. I can tell it is. And he's called the Body Snatcher, Dillian Whyte, which is a nickname he got from Mike McCallum, who was a middleweight champion back in the 80s and 90s for ferocious body shots. And Dillian does bring that to the table. And he's got a very good left hook. And it floored Joseph Parker twice, who'd never been down before. The only thing for him is, you know, he's 6'4" and Tyson's 6'9" and a bigger reach. It's going to be quite easy maybe for Tyson just to stick on the outside and maybe not have the Deontay Wilder fight where he like traded blows. He could just stick a move for the 12 rounds and take the points decision. But we'll have to wait and see what the tactics are. Who knows with Tyson? I mean, these are both unpredictable people. Dillian will want a bit of a tear up. I'm absolutely certain of it.
He'll want to make it a tear up for absolutely. Yeah. It's heavyweight boxing. One punch changes careers. You know, if you're not on it, you will have your head knocked off your shoulders.
I mean,
Go on.
I was going to say, I mean, all you have to do is look at the Otto Wallin fight, which was kind of sandwiched between the first Deontay fight and the second one. This fought Schwartz and Otto Wallin. And Otto Wallin was supposed to fight Dillian Whyte, but they called that off with an injury. I say injury. And suddenly the Fury fight was announced. But Wallin was a much smaller fighter, hasn't got a great KO record, not like Dillian has. And he gave Tyson Fury all sorts of trouble. He was able to get through that jab and he ended up hitting, albeit a southpaw, he was able to hit him with a good power shot, actually cut Tyson across the eye. I think in any other arena in the world, Tyson would have been stopped on cuts. I mean, it required like something like 40 odd stitches. I couldn't believe the fight carried on because he was the house fighter on Top Rank TV.
Wow.
But I think Dillian only has to look at that to think to himself, well, that's a smaller guy who got through, albeit as a southpaw, got through the Tyson jab. So there is a blueprint there. Interestingly, Tyson also fought the workout this week as a southpaw, leading with his right hand with his power shot being left, which he did against Martin Rogan all the years back to win the Irish title. So he could come out like that and try and bugger up Dillian a little bit by just fighting southpaw. Who knows? Like I say,
who knows? Yeah, I know. Ian says I look tired. Ian, this is my concentration face. It's not a face you see often, but I'm focused on what Matt's telling me. Some of it I've not heard for ever. So yeah, I'm really this is my focused face. According to Betfair, you got Tyson Fury 1-6, draw 25-1, and Dillian Whyte 7-2. I know you're a betting man, Mr. Phillips. What would you be going here? Tyson Fury 1-6, draw 25-1, Dillian 7-2.
I would certainly put money on. Look, I think it's difficult to argue that Dillian would stop Tyson in that he's been in the ring 3 times with the most ferocious puncher, I'm told, in the modern era, and he couldn't put him away. So I don't see why Dillian would put him away. I do feel like Tyson could go down in the fight. Like I say, he does lose focus very easily. If it's quite easy for him, which we saw in the first Deontay Wilder fight, I think he was coasting that really. And he suddenly gets knocked down in the 7th, I think it was the 7th. And then he got knocked down in the final round, of course, the Undertaker moment, famous Undertaker moment. So he can switch off. You can't really afford to switch off against Dillian Whyte. Like I say, that left hand is pretty ferocious. I mean, Joseph Parker, who's a former world champion himself, WBO belt, went down twice against him. There's an issue over maybe Dillian's gas tank. He's a very stocky guy. He's much bigger than what Usyk is. But he only really came onto that victory against Parker. He was gassed and he went down in the last round. And I think if there'd been another round in there, probably Parker would have stopped him. Interestingly, if Dillian doesn't turn up to the fight Saturday, and he never can say never until they're both in the ring, Joseph Parker, who's actually a really good friend of Tyson's and was in their camp for the entirety of his camp, is the alternate. So if Dillian does drop out, Joseph, it'll be 2 mates fighting each other in front of 94,000 But I fully expect Dillian to beat out. But we do have an alternate opponent. It's
there you go. Fury all day. Smell the coffee, says Sean Gladding. Cruncher says money talks, bullshit walks. Fury inside 5, round 6 for Fury.
If you with an early one there, I'm so busy gassing now. Let's tell one prediction. I think probably Fury on points, or maybe a late stoppage. I think someone putting it in there 9 to 12 could be something for Fury.
Well, yeah. Fury by points or decision is 9 to 4. Fury by KO, TKO, or DQ is 4 to 6. So you're going to go with what? The knockout, the points? What?
I think I'd probably go with points. I think Dillian's got to really turn it into a bit of a fight. He can be a bit of a plodder though. Do you know what I mean? He's like,
yes, he can.
He fought. I remember him fighting like Dave Allen, who's like a periphery contender.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Although Eddie Hearn gave him a bit of a profile. That's a really plodding fight. Someone really at world level, you should be stopping. And let's not forget Povetkin in Eddie Hearn's back garden. In the old back
fight camp. Yeah. Boom.
Camp.
Good night.
Now, we don't know how much that really did affect him. He came back and won that. But, I mean, they're just the 2 fights he's had. And Tyson's obviously been in real wars with Deontay Wilder. Look, even with this Kinahan thing on his shoulders, I do expect Tyson to come through it. He probably fought Wilder in the 3rd fight on probably 3-4 weeks training because his young daughter was born, was in intensive care. He was sleeping on the hospital floor in Liverpool. So I think if you can overcome that, I think you can probably overcome Dillian. But I think hopefully it'll be a good fight. My worry is that Fury might just coast it on the back foot like he did against Vladimir, and it could become a little bit of a bore fest, and he probably wins it 10 rounds to 2 or something. But we'll see. I think if Dillian does floor him early in the 4th round, like it happened against Wilder, then you could see a bit of a scrap.
Robert Grimsey, no English judges, will be interesting and fair.
No English judges these days.
That knockout in Eddie Hearn's back garden with the fight camp, that is exactly heavyweight boxing in a nutshell, because nobody expected anyone but a Dillian Whyte win that night. Yeah. One punch, changes trajectories, changes plans. Yeah. It was a fuck me. Yes. Particularly with no crowd, you definitely heard it, and it was good night at Vienna. Yeah, I
do feel like the fact that Povetkin then got COVID after the fight and it cancelled the rematch. I do feel like Povetkin could have won that. But I mean, look, Dillian is a fighter. He'll take on anybody. He won't fight Wilder. I mean, like I say, he was mandatory contender. He'll take on anybody, really. And I think if he does lose his fight, which I think he probably will Saturday, I'll be surprised if he wins, he'll come back to the table. There'll be another opportunity for him. Just to let everyone know, not only is the WBC belt on the line, but the Ring Magazine belt, which a lot of boxing purists like myself always see as actually the world heavyweight title. So the Ring Magazine has launched in 1922 in New York, been going 100 years, 100th anniversary. They've always given a champ. If you see the red, white, and the blue belt, a bit of an old school looking belt, that's the Ring Magazine belt. And there's so many champions now these days. Like, who is really the champion? Usyk's got 3 belts and Fury's got 1. But everyone looks at Fury as being the lineal champion because he's never lost even though he was stripped of the title after Vladimir Klitschko, he's never lost it in the ring. So a lot of people do see the Ring Magazine belt as the main belt, and it's not been defended on British soil since 1966. Cassius Clay versus Brian London. Brian London was always an opponent of Henry Cougars. I think they fought 3 times. I think Henry won 3 times. But yeah, so it's the first time since 1966 that this title's been on British soil.
Perfect. Edo Norris, don't underestimate Whyte. You never know, but saying that, Tyson will probably win. As we close, Matt Cruncher Ass talks to me about Ricky Hatton's return to the ring.
Ooh. Yeah, we were chatting about this on the phone earlier. So Ricky's coming back with an exhibition against Marco Antonio Barrera, who was the only guy, if memory suits me correct, to beat Nazim Hamid. I think Naz retired after that, and Amir Khan beat Barrera on cuts. Had a horrendous cut. But yeah, Barrera was like a really good Mexican world champion. So they're going to do a little exhibition. Be interesting to watch. Again, it's this nostalgia thing, isn't it? There's like a thing now where people just come back in their 40s. Look, Mike Tyson fighting Roy Jones Jr. in his in his 50s or whatever on Triller. But it's an exhibition. They're not going to be going to knock each other out. I think it's just something to watch. And Ricky said it's going to be something for fans to enjoy because of the post-pandemic and all that kind of thing. I just hope they don't put it on pay-per-view. Probably be $9.99 somewhere, no doubt.
Sky Sports, Adam Smith. It's not a comeback fight. It's an exhibition. It is well documented that Ricky has fought his demons, and anything that keeps him fit, in shape, and keeps him healthy is important.
Interesting to see what shape he does come back in because he used to balloon up into weight. Ricky,
he did.
that was probably what really probably against elite fighters like Pacquiao and Mayweather, who kept their weight all year round. That's probably what blew him out a little bit. Just before we do go though, can you remember the last time there was an all British heavyweight fight in the UK with a belt on the line? Anyone in the comments?
Oh,
have a little think.
It's
not as far ago as you think. I'll tell you.
Did Frank Bruno?
You're close. Bruno and Lennox Lewis was at Cardiff Arms Park, the old Cardiff Arms Park in Wales, Cardiff. It was at heavyweight. It was Hay versus Harrison.
Oh. The
WBA belt, which a farce of a fight, of course. People might recall that there was actually a British Board of Boxing Control inquiry over the first round in which no one actually connected with a punch. I don't think you'll see that on Saturday. And of course, eventually Hay beat Ugly. I think it was in the third round knockout. Ugly should never really been in there. He was a good amateur Ugly, but not very good pro particularly. But Lewis Bruno was a good fight in Cardiff, and Lewis got the better of Bruno that evening. But they're few and far between. But one for the history books this Saturday, 94,000. I think that would be a crowd hard to beat in this day and age of health and safety. Absolutely.
Ordinary Harrison, says Mike D. Worst fight ever, says Robert Grimsby. There we go. Well, hopefully this fight will live up to it. I'll be watching it. The Mogul will be watching it. And we will see you all for another Talking Knockouts very soon. I'm going Fury with that all-important knockout, whereas Matt sadly isn't.